A warm welcome to everyone. My name is John Thomas. I'm the Humanities Team Conscious Business Program Coordinator and one of the co-hosts of the Living in Oneness 5 Pillars for Success Summit. I'm very excited about today's call with Laurie Hyland. We're going to explore how we can become more awake and embody the experience of living in oneness in our everyday lives. But this session, we're going to take a special focus. We're going to be focusing on an area where many of us often feel really limited and divided and confused. We're going to explore money and our relationship to money and how that relates directly to our ability to live in oneness. I'm going to introduce you to Laurie in just a minute. First, I want to take a minute and acknowledge our audience, all of you listening in. We have 15,000 people that have registered for the Living in Oneness Summit. I want to thank you for joining us on these sessions and joining us today, whether you're on phone or on the webcast or you're listening to one of the replays. So I encourage you to listen and participate. If you miss any sessions, you can enjoy a free playback of the session for up to 48 hours. I also encourage you to purchase the Living in Oneness upgrade package, which includes CDs of the sessions, written transcripts, and other benefits. And then you can listen in at any time on any of these sessions. For a limited time, you can purchase that upgrade for a discount of $100 off the upgrade. And these funds help the Humanities Team fund because we're a volunteer organization largely. So I encourage you to share your comments and questions and any aha moments you have during the call. You can post them directly on Laurie Hyland's page within the Living in Oneness site. And so that website is livingin1.com/speakers/Laurie-Hyland. Or you can enter your comments into the Q&A section on the webcast. Dee Meyer and Nanette Kennedy are producing our call today. So I want to thank you, Dee and Nanette. For those of you on the webcast, if you enter questions, enter your name, where you're calling, or whether you're listening from, and Dee and Annette will bring these questions and comments onto the webcast. So today you're in for a real treat. Before we begin with the interview, I'd like to briefly tell you about Laurie Hyland. Laurie Hyland is founder of Evolutionary Money, a transformational concept that connects money, the economy, physics, and spirit. Evolutionary Money starts with humanity's present belief systems, or kind of our limited views about money and the economy, and provides a path for creating a new system based on the quantum universe. It allows us to look at money and the economy on a personal level and on global levels, and enables us to realize a positive vision for the future. Oneness with money and the economy becomes a new operating worldview. Evolutionary Money offers seminars based on Laurie Hyland's 2013 book, Towards a New Money, Reality, and the Quantum Economy, a visionary look at how money and the economy can become a connecting forces for a new world. This is a fabulous book. I read it and really enjoyed it and encourage you all to read it. I found it enables us to look at money and capitalism through new eyes. And it takes us on a practical but also futuristic, spiritual, and imaginal journey. Laurie's book provides one of the best summaries of quantum physics I've ever read. It boils it down into terms we can all understand. So it lets us become intimate with the quantum universe, and it becomes accessible, and to create an evolutionary belief system based on that view for humanity and for ourselves. So as you'll see, we get into the interview, Laurie combines deep spiritual insight and knowledge of money. She's done deep spiritual work. She's a graduate of a number of Barbara Max Hubbard's trainings. She's also an MBA with a major in economics from Breyer State University. And prior to that, she was a certified financial planner for 25 years. So she's advised hundreds of people, clients, on money and finance, and has taught numerous financial planning courses. So let's begin. Laurie, I am, like I said, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I so resonated with your book and our conversation. I think the view you're bringing in your book and in your work is so needed right now. And I would love to just start kind of right with the topic of money in our first question, which and how that relates to the theme of the summit. So let me ask you, given the theme of this summit, which is all about coming awake to oneness and our innate connection to oneness in all of life, the one area where many of us struggle in this experience is when it comes to our workplace and all our ideas and views around money. So can you maybe begin by telling us how you became interested in money and the economy as a unifying rather than a separating dynamic in our lives?
Well, John, I certainly am eager to share some of these ideas with our audience today and our listeners, and thank you so much for that introduction. And, of course, I always love talking about this. For 25 years, I was a financial planner, as John mentioned, and an investment advisor. And, of course, during that time, I did counsel my clients around a variety of money issues. And interestingly enough, I noticed that several years after I'd been in business, everyone had at least one issue around money. So about 12 years into my practice, I found myself noticing, I guess I call it an inner nudging or some discomfort, like there was something that was not being said around money. And if I could just dig a little deeper, I might discover what this thing we call money is really all about. So as I pondered this question over several years, I fortunately came across Lynn McTaggart's book, The Field, and I'm sure many of you have read this. She clearly laid out the difference, actually I believe it was in the first chapter, between the Newtonian worldview, the worldview of separation, and the quantum worldview, or the worldview of connectedness and oneness. This then raised a most exciting question for me. What would be the difference if we looked at money through the Newtonian worldview and then contrast it with the lens of the quantum worldview? So this was my first big aha.
Mm-hmm.
A year or so later, I was reading just a fairly nondescript book when I came across this sentence. Money is the matrix of all the forms of energy in the universe. Well, this was just a shocking sentence to me, and I read it probably 50 times. I'm going to say it one more time now. Money is the matrix of all the forms of energy in the universe. Well, this was my second big aha, and I hope to talk about this sentence a little more in detail later on the call. But these two ideas eventually enabled me to connect money into the divinity and the oneness of the universe. So that's how it all started, John.
Yeah, no, I just thinking about the power of those words and how it kind of shocks it did for me when we first spoke and I first read your book. It's a little bit shocking to our normal view of money, because most money is just like a necessary evil almost, just something we have.
Yes.
Yeah. And
yes, I spent a lot of time thinking about that sentence and sending it out to friends and asking them, well, what do you think about this? And so finally it began to gel. But it is a shocking sentence.
I think a lot of that has to do with where we, it ties into how we approach our work, and where we spend most of our time is in our jobs. And the very motivator for most of us is to earn a living, which is a practical reality. But it seems it puts the whole central, money becomes a central focus and motivator, but in this way of scarcity and of need, and most of us stop to really think about, well, what is money and what is it really, beyond that scarcity view? What is money? And when I read your book, Toward a New Money Reality in the Quantum Economy, I was really struck me how much I've been brainwashed by my culture and how I think about it. And I wonder, your book really kind of picks that apart beautifully, and I was wondering if you could go into that. Where does our culture get so confused about money?
Oh, that's such a great question, John. And we also we really need to acknowledge our confusion and become clear about that, I think, before we can find a path toward more clarity. So I truly believe we're confused about money for two reasons. First, because we're stuck in an old societal belief system, the Newtonian worldview. And secondly, money has been left out of the oneness of the universe. So let me tell you a little more what I mean by that. We all know now we're in a time of great transformation in ourselves and in our planet, and we know without a doubt that everything is connected. I mean, that's why humanity's team is here. We're all one. But what we do not know is that money and the economy are included in this oneness. So, of course, the big question is, how do we come to know that we are one with money and the economy? And even more important, how do we really experience that oneness? And as you said, John, money is a central focus and motivator in our lives. I like so much what Jacob Needleman says in his book, Money and the Meaning of Life, when he tells us, in our world today, money enters into everything we do, into every aspect and pocket of life. We cannot study ourselves as we are, nor can we understand our neighbor without calmly observing our own selves in the thick of the money game. I just think that's a great quote. So this pervasiveness of money in our own lives and in our world certainly has confused us. We need to have just a little history on this so we can see where we've come from. And many of you know that in the ancient times, long before Newton came around, the worldview was dominated by ideas of the cosmos, an all-encompassing harmony, a unified whole in which God's presence and spirit were embodied in all living things. This harmony encompassed money, or we could call it trade or barter. But at that point in history, money was included in the unified whole. Then Newton came along in the 1700s, and he totally turned this concept upside down. He decided the universe fit together as a perfectly well-oiled machine. His clockwork universe assumed that with an automatic pilot, the universe would function just fine. And there was no direct access to God, since God had removed himself or herself from the world, and since the world was all about separate pieces, then humankind, according to Lynn McTaggart, took the biggest hit, and we saw ourselves as isolated and alone in the vast universe. So people were viewed as machines, money became a tool, we envisioned the future as it has been in the past, and only rational decisions were tolerated. And then, of course, Darwin came along 100 years later and set the stage for a highly competitive society. So I think we can say without a doubt, and this was an aha that came to me, I think we can say without a doubt that our fundamental relationship with money continues to be grounded in the 17th century worldview. And this is the big picture of the history which has formed the basis of our confusion.
Yeah, and I can see how those two views, the Newtonian view and the Darwinian view of survival of the fittest, with money being such a pervasive place, it can become the place of greatest tension around competition and having our fair share, and all the tension that builds up around that.
Yeah, and the individualism, the great individualism that came out of all of that. So the next big question is, we have a little bit of history, but how do we, or I, become aware of our own confusion? So in my book and seminar, we listed 6 types of personalities, or I can call them caricatures because we want to put a little humor in it, in relationship to money. In other words, there are commonalities in all of us about how we relate to money. And we've talked so much on this series of interviews, John, about our shadow side. Mm-hmm. And so these personalities or characterologies are really where our shadow is projected onto money. So I'm going to just tell you a few of them because they're kind of fun. The first one I like to talk about is the righteous resistor, because this is me. Early on, I learned that the love of money is root of all evil. And as a result of that, I projected disdain onto money because it wasn't spiritual. I avoided money matters. And I experienced the separation as I will not make contact around money. So that was one of our types. Another one we came up with, we're calling the avaricious earner, who sees money as the way to power. This person uses money to feel powerful. And this characterology experiences separation as I have disdain for people who won't work hard for their money. And then another example. Go ahead, John. Did you want to say something?
No, I keep going. It's just, these are really classic archetypes of the way we relate to it.
And the interesting thing is we can find pieces of ourselves in many of them, not just one. Mm-hmm. But I just wanted to share this other one called the parsimonious saver. This is someone who uses money to feel secure and therefore will hoard money even if not necessary. And they experience a separation as I have to be alert not to be taken advantage of. So those are some samples of our caricatures. Interestingly enough, once we named this and we started to look a little deeper into these personalities, we discovered each type had an authentic desire. And it was the uncovering of this authentic desire that opened the pathway for us to the connection and the oneness that we want. So the righteous resistor, myself, I had the authentic desire of integrity. That of the avaricious earners was empowerment. And the parsimonious saver, of course, the authentic desire was to just feel secure. So in the seminar and the book, we called this the old money reality.
Wow.
To continue to work with these types, and through the 25 years of working with my clients, I now know that our fundamental problem is not that the love of money is the root of all evil, but in fact, we have not loved money enough. So I would like us all seriously to consider, those of us on this call, that the profound, deep love of money is a central key to all of our lives. Thus, John, I think this is how we have become confused.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. Very beautiful. I was just reflecting as you were saying that too, like how I think I speak for many of the people on the call that there can be a bristling about this whole idea of loving money because there's the old, Newtonian, Darwinian view creeping in there, and the view which you're pointing us towards, where this love of money is actually connected to oneness, love of money as its connection and flow, and unity in this greater field of our collective consciousness is this new vision you're offering. And I think there's probably, in this journey and what I've reflected on your book, there's some work for all of us to kind of look into those shadow areas because, like you were saying, the motivation that was actually hidden and confused in that shadow is pure for all these archetypes. I mean, we're all seeking the same thing: connection, oneness, empowerment, grace, beauty, love. And so I really love that. So I was wondering, can we shift gears a little bit and talk next about this bigger, the quantum view you share and your view? So, because it gave me a really, when I related that to money for the first time in your book, it really changed gave me a radically different perspective, and it helped me see money through the lens of quantum physics and to consider what's the real nature of money as something that's actually divine. And so can you go into that more at this point?
Yes, John, I would love to do this because this is really the heart of the message. And to take the journey to the divinity and oneness of ourselves with money, we do need to enter the world of quantum physics. And just a quick, brief history. Early in the 1900s, physicists called into question all of Newton's theories. And within 50 years, the clockwork universe would be proven false. And this, as we've been talking about, led to a profoundly new way of viewing the universe, which we now call quantum physics. And quantum physics has many interesting concepts, now all proven by physicists. So one concept, the one we know so well, is that of connection and oneness. We know we are all held together by an energetic field, which I love what Greg Braden calls it, the divine matrix. And in that divine matrix, we are held in our own divinity. Then there are other quantum concepts of which we may not be so aware. One critical concept is what is called the observer effect. This simply means that nothing comes into being without someone first observing it. This has just turned everything upside down for me. An example is the age-old question: if a tree falls in the forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? Quantum physics would say if there is not an observer, there is no sound, there is not even a tree. Where in the Newtonian world, the observer observed but never disturbed, the tree would be there and fall and make a sound even if it were not being observed. So that is a huge shift. And this observer effect, I think we're just beginning to tap the tip of it as what we can do with it, but it has so many applications. Do we see doom and gloom, or do we see all the new creative ideas coming into being? Do we see our life as the same old, or do we begin to expect miracles? And it gives us permission to observe something different around our relationship to money. So now we can take this quantum worldview to money and see what we can observe. As I was pondering the true nature of money some years ago, I realized that money most likely had its own essence. And we know that everything in the universe has its own essence. We see the true nature of a tree and its roots, its branches, its shape. We know that Amelia Earhart's true nature was that of an adventurer, while Martin Luther King's essence was courage and compassion. And I know that each of us have worked on our own essence, have experienced that, or as Barbara Marx Hubbard says, our essential selves. So it came to me that if we can clean, and I don't mean money laundering, but if we can clean or remove money from the cultural projections, from our own projections, then money's essence, as I have come to know it, is simply a continuous flow of giving and receiving. It is simply a continuous flow of giving and receiving. Now, we need to think about this for a moment, because on one level, it's extremely simple. We know that every time we pay a bill or we receive a paycheck, we are exchanging the giving for the receiving or the receiving for the giving. We then become pure conduits for giving and receiving. And isn't this what we do all of our lives? We give and we receive. Much of our giving and receiving has nothing to do with money, but the exchange of money, and we can call it anything. It can be barter, it can be a Bitcoin, it can be complementary currencies. It really doesn't matter. So the exchange for goods and services is foundational for our physical lives. And it was so interesting because even Marx and Engels once observed the exchange of products is the basis for every social order. Every society is built on an economic base because we must first feed, clothe, and house ourselves. And without this foundation of exchange, we could not be physically alive and participate in other forms of human exchange, use smiles and hugs and conversation and even love. And this flows easily unless we become afraid or isolate or separate ourselves. So let us just for a moment be in awe at how money enables this immense forms of giving and receiving in our daily lives. Let's take a moment for this to sink in. If we see money as giving and receiving, we strengthen the connection of everyone on the planet. We strengthen the quantum principle of entanglement, or we strengthen the divine matrix. And this is a quantum leap.
Yeah, it's powerful what you're suggesting, really, to switch our view of money from the traditional view to this quantum view. It's really energy. It's the flow of life in that form, and it's this continual giving and receiving that is so inherent in just how life moves and how the universe moves. It's how love flows. And
yes,
it's
John.
Beautiful way of just switching our consciousness around this. Also makes me reflect on how so much of what's happened with the economic crisis is how much money has been pulled out of the economy and parked on the sidelines until people feel it's safe to move again. So
it has so blocked the giving and receiving.
Right, exactly. So if it's to the degree people are locked into the old paradigm, then that's what it leads you to in moments of shock or fear. Whereas if you're in the quantum worldview, it's more like we embrace that because it's just evolutionary. So we go back to the exchange, the flow, the giving and receiving. Seems to me.
Yes, I think that's totally right, John. And had the flow of money been more, well, it got hoarded after the recession. It was really hoarded. If it had not been hoarded, we would be in a very different place, or we would have recovered much quicker, I believe. But people were scared. You're right. People were scared to take that leap, to let the money flow where it needed to go in order to have the economy recuperate.
I think it's so powerful, this new worldview, as I think about it, and how it could really change our the whole way we go about the economy today. I was going to go into a little bit deeper. You made this contrast of the old view of the Newtonian Darwinian view to the world of quantum physics around money. But you also, in your book, you talk about that, and this is kind of where I think we feel like we've started to head into, is how it impacts the whole process for capitalism and the economy. And I wondered if you could share some of your insights on that. And then we can,
Sure.
and then I'd love from there to go back to our personal experience of that because,
Mm-hmm.
it's useful to look at.
Sure. This sounds perfect, John. This is just fine. And we can go into how we might move this same quantum worldview into our economy. This was actually one of my most fascinating pieces of research when I was getting my master's, because when I started to look through the lens of Newtonian physics, I looked at capitalism through the lens of Newtonian physics. It was very exciting to discover that other writers had talked about Adam Smith, and you may or may not know, he's the founding father of capitalism. He actually intentionally aligned his theories with the Newtonian worldview. And
makes sense. That's what I guess. Then he see how he would do that given the time, right? But yeah.
Yeah, I think at the time, everybody was really excited about the Newtonian worldview and Newtonian physics, and so economics, of course, then became aligned with that worldview. It does make total sense. But I wanted to say just a few words about Adam Smith, since he was such an important figure in the development of capitalism. He lived in the 1700s, and looking around his world, which he was in a small village, he saw the baker baking, saw the shoemaker making shoes, the butcher cutting meat. And this, to me, was a fascinating piece. The baker, the shoemaker, and the butcher were making their living because it was in their own self-interest to do so. And the result was quite surprising. Smith observed that people had enough shoes to buy and enough bread and meat to eat, all without anyone directing the amount to be produced. And so Smith, puzzling over this, something was making the marketplace work. Smith called this unseen force the invisible hand. And this paralleled Newton's clockwork universe where God set the world in motion and stepped aside, and thus it was with the burgeoning economy. There was no direct involvement on anyone's part, human or God, yet it all worked. So Smith must have asked himself whether Newtonian laws of motion that regulated the economy, and as it turned out, Newton's images of an orderly, predictable universe set the stage for Smith's conception of capitalism. And of course, Darwin became involved in this, and we have our competitive society today. So thus began the first economic belief system. And I was just delighted to discover this connection, because if capitalism is just a belief system rather than a hard science, it can be changed. And we all know that. We have belief systems, and we've been in the process of changing them for a number of years. So this gave me hope that the same thing could happen with capitalism. And we know it's not working today. We are inundated with problems on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think
Take a sip of water. So Eric Weinhocker, he wrote a brilliant book, The Origin of Wealth, tells us that the field of economics is going through its most profound change in over 100 years. Economics today is, in fact, in the early stages of a paradigm shift. He continues to say we need a radical new perspective on long-standing economic questions. And this was what was so interesting. This would involve a new language. He's saying we need a new language for discussing and understanding economics and business issues. So, and guess what? It is the quantum worldview that gives us permission to make up new rules or new means, a new language for an economy. For in the quantum universe, there is unlimited potential, and we are given permission to make up our new rules.
It's just so fascinating, as I think many of us on this call appreciate. We're seeing the same thing happen in all the other fields of science as well, and biology and genetics, understanding of the brain, and all of them are all of these different disciplines are converging back in the same transformation away from the Newtonian view to this quantum view of connectedness. And so it's so beautiful. What you're sharing is same things happening in economics.
Yes, it is. I think the whole world is moving more into the quantum, whether we call it that or not. And I also liked what was so helpful to me was something that Bruce Lipton and Steve Bauer said in their book Spontaneous Evolution, because it doesn't mean we do away with the Newtonian universe. And they say quantum physics does not negate Newtonian physics, but rather subsumes it. In other words, quantum physics is a larger realm of awareness that includes and substantially adds to the information provided by Newtonian physics. Consequently, quantum mechanics accounts for what is already known, plus a whole new realm of heretofore unrecognized forces that control the unfolding universe. Wow, that was a new insight for me.
Yeah, it's a beautiful book, Spontaneous Evolution, and it actually shows just the thing we were just talking about, how they bring in how this is happening in biology and genetics and all these other areas of our worldview has been expanded in a way that doesn't just jettison the old, doesn't jettison Darwinian, for example, Darwin's view, but it takes it to a new level of clarity. It's connected to wholeness.
Yes. And I think as long as we're here in our physical bodies, we have to live in a Newtonian world. We have to live in a world of separation on one level. We wouldn't be able to operate our daily lives.
Mm-hmm.
So with this knowledge, then, we can be making some what we can call discontinuous or quantum leaps when we strive to understand, embody the new economic paradigm of the quantum economy. And certainly, what is discussed in terms of writing new rules or belief systems is not the be-all or end-all, but it's a jumping-off point for a new relationship to the economy. So just how do we begin to talk about the quantum economy? And I think the first thing we need to do is look at traditional economic theories and compare them, or the belief, the old economic beliefs, with what might be new quantum beliefs about the economy. So first, we do have a belief, it's probably very unconscious, but we have a belief about what holds the economic universe together. So in traditional economics, it was the invisible hand, where individuals did what they did in their own self-interest, and that held the economic world together. But in the quantum world, we can go to a different conclusion. What if we conclude that it's creativity that truly holds the economic universe together? In the quantum world, what might be the economic experience if more people were able to unleash their inherent creativity? And we see that happening. I mean, it's already to begin happening in businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a belief system about how we participate in the economy. And the traditional economic rule of laissez-faire, or it's best to keep our hands off the economy, let the economy run itself and it'll do fine. And we know that today this is just not working. So we have quantum physics telling us we're not outside of creation. We as observers are always participating in the universe, and as we observe, we change things. So we are part and parcel of the economy, and we are all creators in alliance with the source. hands-off in the traditional economy becomes full participation in a quantum economy.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just say that really does make sense. It is, we are inherently, what quantum physics shows through consciousness, we are inherently part and parcel, one with the manifestation, the creation of the universe. And so you're just saying the same thing applies now to how we, as integrate with the economy. And just like you're saying before, the invisible hand is actually replaced by this bigger view of the divine matrix, the unity of all of life. Anyway, keep going. They're very powerful.
Okay. I just wanted to give a fascinating example of these two belief systems. There was an op-ed piece by Thomas Friedman in the New York Times several months ago, and he was commenting on the creativity coming out of Silicon Valley, and he noted that LinkedIn is developing a website that will name every job being offered around the globe full-time, temporary, and volunteer. And that, in addition, that took my breath away. But then in addition, the article went on to say that the skills needed for each job will be linked to the educational institutions that can provide training to acquire these desired skills. This kind of creativity then activates on a large scale full participation and certainly engages the quantum principle of the observer effect. And I know this is only one example. I know there are many, many examples of this happening in the economy and in business today.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, the way it's showing, LinkedIn and as an embodiment of the internet is actually a manifestation of the two things you just talked about. This connection.
Yes, the connection is amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the how the observer affects, that integration into the creative process. In this case, of jobs. That's beautiful.
Yes, that's full employment, or mostly full employment, would be such a wonderful thing to have happen in our world. And this certainly would be a step toward that. And then I think, we have a brief about how we observe the economic future, and traditional economics envision the future as very predictable and always a result of cause and effect. In the quantum worldview, events happen as a result of millions of pieces of information coming together, and we can call this synchronicity.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you've noticed, but I've noticed that these leaps, these miracles are exploding exponentially right now. And just in the technology field, now we have iPads and iPods, and we not only have Skype, we have Zoom and Uvu, and I just read there's 7 billion cell phones in the world today. All of this, which creates a stronger connection with everyone around the globe. And so I think more of these leaps can be expected with our increased awareness of just observing miracles and the unexpected rather than the same old, same old.
This is so beautiful what you're describing. It does seem like these quantum leaps and synchronicities are happening at an unprecedented scale. And even though mainstream media isn't picking this up, how people are developing bacteria that can break down oil and oil slicks, and are showing how mushroom mycelia can actually break down radioactive waste, and many, many more things are happening that are, algae becoming jet fuel, and all these things that are, I think representing the very principles you're talking about, and yet often get missed in the mainstream press. So we can take heart in that and be in wonder of it. It's pretty amazing that this is going on.
Yes, I think this is a very awesome time to be alive if we can just focus on all the creativity that's happening in our world, mm-hmm. and all the transformation. So I don't know, John, I have some rules I could talk about for a few minutes. Is that where you want to go at this point?
Well, let's see. What's that? I'm open to anything. We have about 15 minutes. We'll have to have a few minutes at the end to wrap up on a few things. So we've got about less than 15 minutes, and we could go into that. I'd also want to make sure we also tie this back into, bring it down. So we've been talking about at the big level of the economy and so forth, but also want to make sure we kind of bring it back down into what most of us experience is kind of our day-to-day, like relationship in work, and how we experience that. But so how would you like to proceed here with the next?
Well, maybe what I can do is I'd like to just name one rule. Why don't I do that? There are 16 in my book, but why don't I name one? And this is just as an example. It's one that I really like. It's because I'm just so committed to more employment for people. Mm-hmm. But an old rule saw labor as commodity, or employees were a commodity. And a way to make a profit from someone's work, you either had labor, you had land, or you had capital. And that was the way it was in traditional economics. Labor, actually, people, employees became machines. And the question always was, how much output can a person, also viewed as a machine, produce in a day?
Yeah, that directly ties into the old Newtonian model, right?
Yes, it does. It does. Yeah. And so from the quantum worldview, where we see everyone is connected and everyone has potential for immense creativity, I think it's time, and many people are saying this, it's not just me, that employees are seen as a resource that is not easily laid off in an economic downturn. And in the quantum economy, employees would be cherished for potential creativity to help solve current issues. Now, a wonderful example of this was in an article in Times Magazine, I think 3 or 4 months ago. There was an auto parts manufacturing company in Germany which lost 40% of its income in the 2008-2009 downturn.
Whoa.
And I know, that was a lot. So you would expect layoffs. I mean, immediately you would expect a huge percent of layoffs. But the owner, instead of doing that, took her own money, was not a small sum, but it was a sum that was able to put that into the business, which kept everybody employed during the downturn. I'm sure everyone took a salary cut. But then she reasoned that she would not have to hire people back once business started up again. So that was just a wonderful example of this, of employees as resource. So I guess, and then in my book there's 15 more rules, but that is one of my favorites. Some people have read the rules and say, oh my gosh, this seems like socialism. But I want to assure you it is not socialism. It is not. Quantum economics does not do away with entrepreneurship or the free market. Instead, it consciously brings our economic system into the abundance of the universe, thus aligning this system with amazing new possibilities of creativity and connection.
Yeah.
The entrepreneur, excuse me, Don, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
That's all right. I just wanted to say that one of the gifts of capitalism has been the freedom to be an entrepreneur, to plan, to risk, to fail, to innovate, to meet needs that had not been met before, and that is something we absolutely do not want to do away with.
Yeah, I think that the rules in your book, again, I encourage people to get the book if you're at all drawn to this topic, because the rules are fabulous, and they go into so many examples how really the quantum view, it's not just profit. Now it's profit, people, planet, and when you view the whole in its entirety, new possibilities emerge that businesses you just couldn't even see it with the old paradigm. You'd be too blocked and blinded. So I'm so excited about this. I did want to, if you don't mind, switch gears a little bit. Just one question that came in is really, catching my eye. And
Sure, John.
I don't know who. Let's see if I find the name of the person asking it. This is from Linda in South Carolina. She asked, if I'm understanding all of this, fear, in quotes, of money began with how we are raised, how our parents are raised, and so on. So when my parents used to say things like, quote, money doesn't grow on trees, or we can't afford something, or we don't have enough money, or money is the root of all evil, etc., we've been set up at an early age to fear money. Is that correct?
Oh, yes, Linda, that is so correct. And that is not an uncommon story that you're telling. And to undo all of that internally in ourselves does take some work, but it is possible to move beyond that. And the truth is, maybe your family didn't have extra money. Sometimes, we have to live at a survival level. But I always encourage my clients and people I've worked with that try to find one little thing that you can have in your house which says you're rich, that you can have abundance even in the midst of that. And for me, when I was first starting my business and money was really slow to come in, if I had a roll of stamps in my drawer and I had a tank full of gas in my car, those were my symbols of feeling abundance and rich. So I think that's one way to cut across that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also then money is the root of all evil. That's where the righteous resistor comes in. That's what I was. And so I think as we gain appreciation at how money connects us to everyone in the universe, I mean, if you just go to the grocery store and you hand your credit card to pay the clerk and you look at your cart full of groceries and you think for a moment, my goodness, there must have been thousands of people that participated in getting this basket full of groceries for me, then you can be in awe and gratitude for a moment how that transaction just creates connection with all those people. So those are the two things that might help, but it's certainly a very common issue in families.
It's beautiful, really. And I wonder, I know we'll probably only have time for one more question, and one I wanted to ask you, Laurie, is kind of taking this into the deepest level of oneness, which we all are, the summit's all about, and how we experience that. And as these views shift around money and the economy, I'm sure you've seen how that has impacted people on a really personal level in terms of that connection. So, for example, I have had the experience while teaching oneness at Intel Corporation and meditation and mindfulness, how people find not only did their job experience improve and their ability to work with their peers and their boss, but then they come in with these amazing stories that shifted how they related to their parents, their children, their family, their spouse, and so forth. And you've worked with a lot of different people and clients that have shifted. You've helped them shift this whole orientation to money. And in addition to the economic success that comes from that, what's about the impact and that connection to oneness, to coming alive in oneness? Anything you can share with that as we
Sure, John. I'd like to, I can share, I don't know how much time we have. I can start with one. You can tell me if we have time for another one.
Another 5 minutes, I think. So.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. I'll share these two examples then that I had been thinking about. Mm-hmm. I mentioned early in the call that we do have, most of us have a shadow side around money. We project some issues onto our workings with money. So one man in one of our seminars revealed that he worried about every penny. He worried whether or not he got a good deal when buying something. He worried about whether he made the right decision or had done enough comparison. And obviously his shadow side was deep insecurity about money. He was so afraid to spend it, so afraid he would make the wrong decision. But by the end of the seminar, and he'd gone through the process where we go into the new money reality, he began to see that he could have more freedom in his spending. He didn't need to be that worried about money. I mean, you might be in a situation where you'd have to be very careful, but he was not. Mm-hmm. And his shadow side was obviously insecurity around money. So he became really ecstatic and beaming at the end of the seminar, and he says, I'm free. I don't have to worry about money anymore. And
Wow.
then that energy that was used to worry about money was released into the world, into his life, where he could feel more connected. He didn't have to worry anymore about what he got a good deal, which cut the connection between himself and the person he was doing business with. So I think there was a lot more energy, and all of his insecurity was projected onto money. He did not experience that in any other aspect of his life. So that was exciting to see that happen. Then I worked with several people during my 25 years who always wanted to put things off. It's like they were waiting for their ship to come in. And the shadow side was, someone else must be responsible for my situation. But when I worked with these people and they were able to name their shadow, they began to take responsibility for their own situation, and they found more independence and creativity. And that itself broke down the separation and moved them more into connectedness. And for everyone, as well as myself, I think this process has led to a profound sense of being held by money, which is just a strange thing to say, but we're all held in love by money because it connects us to everyone, and it brings each of us more freedom, more joy, and of course that connection and therefore oneness. So it's been an exciting journey, not only for myself, but those I have taught.
Those are beautiful examples, and I really love kind of ending on this because for me personally that was also a shocker, at points in my life where we hit some financial crises, and when I really sat with it deeply inside, I found there was a deeper shadow. It was a different story than money. It was a story about not feeling secure in the world, and when that fell away, like you're describing with these other people, when we break out of that old paradigm around money, it can be profoundly shifting us into this experience of we're more available to actually experience the oneness all around us. And
yes, that's so true, John.
Yeah,
and I'm glad to have your experience of that too.
Yeah. Well, this has been awesome. Really fantastic for what you shared here. I wish we had another hour to keep going. There's so much we could say on this, and I want to thank you, Laurie. And I'll take just a few minutes here before, because I know the call will kind of cut off rather abruptly, just to take a minute. And I want to remind everyone else that participating in the summit, there's still time you can listen to these replays for the next 48 hours, and if you purchase the upgrade package, there's a $100 discount on that for a period of time that lets you get the entire summit for yours to listen to and keep and share with friends and family. And it's also a great way to support Humanity's team. So I encourage you to think about that. Also encourage you to think about what's coming up tomorrow. There's a couple of beautiful sessions. And we have Annie Burnside will be interviewed by Dee Meyer at 8:30 Pacific time. And Annie is a beautiful teacher, mystic, coach, consultant. She's a bridge between sort of mainstream and the mystical. And a lot of her focus is on relationships and parenting and helping people awaken to their truth of oneness. Also, at 10, Steve Berriman, who we referenced earlier on the call, well-known humorist and workshop leader who's been doing work for more than 25 years as Swami Bhyanananda, as many people know, the cosmic comic, and absolutely 2 sessions you don't want to miss. I want to quickly thank all of the volunteers that are making this happen and the support I got on this session. I want to thank Steve Farrell, Dee Meyer, Nanette Kennedy, Carrie Beach, Todd Kramer, Melissa Puri, Jolene Cole, Jewel Alexander, Eleanor Healy, and Debbie Sieve, and others. This has been a work of love for many people. And thank you all. Have a wonderful day, and be sure to catch the coming sessions.